Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's functional class on boosting your brain health. My name is Dan Kellams, and this is Darlene, our health coach and nutritionist extraordinaire here at Peak Vitality. So today we're going to dig into boosting your brain health. This isn't a super long class. Just we're gonna give you some great information to understand it. It's actually our final pillar on our health restoration plan. And the reason, and you're going to see this as we go through, the reason the brain is kind of the end result is because when you start working on the gut, it has huge impacts on the brain. The gut-brain connection is a gigantic piece of your overall health, and we start with the gut, and then getting rid of toxins in the body via the liver, then getting the nutrients that you need, adding in exercises. These are all some key concepts that we're going to touch on today. But that's why, we put brain and nervous system health at the end, not because of its lack of importance, but because of its place in a systematic approach to actually getting everything better. You just can't get into the brain unless, you're open to drilling a hole in the middle of your skull. And we just aren't equipped to do that here. So anything you want to talk about before we get started, Darlene?
No, I think you said it perfectly. Everything that we do along the way in each pillar is helping us to reduce inflammation, and we start to see that people improve, and all we have to do is really target different, brain improvement needs, whether it's memory or retention. So that's why it's key to get inflammation down as low as possible before we get to that pillar.
Absolutely. And we had a post the other day that said the standard American diet will give you standard American diseases, right? And in the United States, a common problem is as you age, our brain function significantly declines. And by age 39, we begin to see these changes. I ran into a friend of mine from high school, and I remember high school like it was yesterday. I remember the classes, the teachers, my colleagues, and all the colleagues, but the other students and friends I went to school with. And I ran into a guy that we had classes all the way through high school. And I run into him and his wife, and I was like, "Hey, Brian, what's going on? It's good to see you." And he was like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I don't know you." And I was like, I had to reintroduce myself, and his wife said, that he in the last few years he had some memory decline, and he's 42 years old. So that's 39 hits right in that space, right? So, and it's crazy. So it is a very common problem. Parkinson's disease is one of the, cognitive or neurological disorders, neurological degeneration that you see along with ALS and Alzheimer's. But with Parkinson's, there's 50,000 new diagnoses a year, which is huge. And that was stated in an article published in Cornell Medical Center in New York in 2011, and they said a brain energy crisis may spark Parkinson's. So what they're finding is most of these neurodegenerative diseases are what's called a neuronal energy problem, and neurons are basically your brain cells. You have neurons and astrocytes, and so if the neurons can't get their source of energy, they start dysfunctioning and they decline, just like you would if you didn't have energy. So it's like, they say most neurodegenerative diseases are some type of energy crisis that is occurring in the brain. And, so you think of Parkinson's as an issue with dopamine, but even that area in the brain called the substantia nigra, when it starts to decline, when there's not appropriate levels of energy in the brain. So, we talk to people all the time and we say, "Hey, do you feel tired? Do you feel fatigued?" And if you do, that means like all of your cells, even your brain cells, are declining in their energy source. So think of this as really as an energy crisis. And so what disrupts energy? We always say, well, not being able to absorb your nutrients, or not getting the right nutrients, or having some type of infection, or some type of stress in your life, some type of toxic exposure. But the energy that we're talking about actually is produced in mitochondria. And so these are your powerful factories for creating energy. They create the energy that we use in the body is called ATP. And so some of the most advanced practitioners of these brain and neurological degenerative conditions is they're looking at how do we assist in the energy crisis. So rather than treating symptoms of Parkinson's with dopamine, they're looking at power supplies, which is also what we're doing. So we're looking at all these things that can drive the process and making sure that you can supply the body and the brain with the energy to do itself. And how many people would you say come into the office and fatigue or brain fog or poor memory is a common symptom for them?
It's the majority of people.
Yeah. So it's, when you start correcting these things in your body, you're probably in huge ways impacting the future of your brain health. And that's our goal. If we get these things corrected, we'll never know what the significance of the impact created on you by going through a health restoration program. So whether you're at this office or one of our other offices, the key is this mitochondria is crazy important. And so your brain cells make up about 2% of your body, but they consume, while you're awake, 20% of your energy and another 25% when you're sleeping. So the brain requires a lot of energy. And so that's a quarter of your energy, right? So if you feel brain dead, that's never a good thing. And it's an indicator that the rest of you is missing some energy. And we want to make sure that we can get that back. And that mitochondria is critical. And one of the things, I don't have any slides in here. We don't have any slides about this. But mitochondria are ancient bacteria. And they have a very strange relationship and communication with the bacteria in your gut. And so that's one of the reasons, again, that gut bacteria is so critical to brain health. Alzheimer's disease, another neurodegenerative disease, and amyloid plaque. So Alzheimer's patients have about 100 times more plaque in their brains than normal adults. And so these misfolded proteins, these tau proteins, these things that are creating that plaque, they occur when there is also an energy crisis and the inability for the brain to clean itself out, which happens with sleep. That's why sleep's so important. But we all have some amyloid plaque, but those that have Alzheimer's have much more. And one of the things I like talking about is they were looking at Alzheimer's disease, and they did some studies. And one of the studies they looked at were nuns, because nuns seem to have a lower incident rate of Alzheimer's disease. And I think we've talked about this.
Yeah, you shared that with us.
And when they started looking at them and doing some testing, these nuns, they didn't have any symptoms of Alzheimer's, but they did have the clinical changes in their brain tissue. They did have some plaques, and it was building up like you would expect in the population, but they didn't have any symptoms. And the thing is they fast on a regular basis. And so their bodies were fat adapted. They could use ketones for energy. And so their body had an alternative source of energy. So they never went into an energy crisis that really kicked off the Alzheimer's chain of events. So it's just really interesting, right? But here we're talking about amyloid plaque. So what builds that up? Well, it's toxicity, the body's ability or the inability to clean itself out. So lack of sleep, poor digestion, and nutrient deficiencies are going to trigger this. So these are huge things that we really push for people. So the amyloid, we all produce about the same amount. But like we said, Alzheimer's patients, they can't clean it up. So you can see those plaques in the bottom right-hand side, those brown spots. It's like brain poo, right? Yeah, we don't want that. We don't want any poo in the brain, right? So another one that's going to be an issue is cerebral atrophy. And that's your brain shrinking. And so on MRIs, with people that have obesity, people who have blood sugar issues, people that have substance abuse issues, or they have issues with hormones or stress or even these nutrient deficiencies. So that's all the things we talk about, right? Besides aging, right? Aging kills more people than anything else. Right? It's the number one cause of death, is aging. So, but all these imbalances that you can have will trigger cerebral atrophy. And one of the things that we don't talk about very much is thyroid. So if the thyroid's downregulated, and we say the thyroid controls every cell in the body, well, if your thyroid's not optimized, well, your brain cannot be optimized, nor can the rest of your body. So not only your brain cells not going to get the energy that they need to do their job and to heal, but also the inability for the rest of the body to work is going to affect everything on this page, right? But all of these can cause the brain to shrink, and you can get MRIs and you can get your brain looked at. And one of the top neurologists I like to follow had done some research on himself. He looks at brains every day, and he ran an MRI on his own brain. He was like, oh my gosh, he had the brain of like a 90-year-old. So he started looking at all these things you could do to increase the growth of his brain. And it included like wiping out all these things, adding in meditation, getting into clean eating and all these different supplements that you would naturally find in your foods if you ate a complete diet. So really crazy stuff. This is from South Florida and UCLA. They said for every excess pound piled on the body, the brain gets a little smaller. So most of the lost tissue is found in the temporal and frontal lobes of the brain, especially in the hippocampus. And that's the seat of memory, concentration, and focus. And how many people have problems with memory, concentration, and focus, right? It's amazing. So obesity is equal to the dangers of pollution, smoking, and alcohol. And so on average, an obese person has 8% less brain tissue. So it's like we're replacing brain tissue for fat tissue. That's a crazy number. It's a good reason to, do whatever you can to find out why you're having problems shedding that weight. But excess, body weight releases more estrogen and inflammation. And just back here, we said, estrogen deficiency can be one issue, but on the far side, elevated levels can be an issue. So it's pretty interesting. So we've talked about all the things that can create it. You understand the pathway of getting there, getting to the 5 pillars, why it's so important to implement these things and these changes into your life to save your brain, to save your mind, right? Nobody wants to get out of their mind, right? So how do you boost your brain power? One of the first ones is you can actually use acupuncture. This is actually a diagram for auricular acupuncture. And so you can actually just stimulate your ear. You can rub your ear. If you just took your ears and start rubbing them up here in the top, right? That part right up here in the middle. I see my mouse will go on that. It's in the pink area. It says Shen Men. That means bright mind. So you can stimulate that area. You can rub your ears. You can grab it. You can massage your entire ear and your earlobes. After you do that for like 30 seconds to a minute, it feels good. You feel a little bit more alert.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
The ear, you have so many nerves that go to the ear that feed the rest of the body, but it actually will activate the brain. It's a really good way to wake yourself up, get alert, and get the whole body stimulated. But the auricular points are amazing. But that was just a nice little bonus thing for you. But one of the first things is detox to boost your brain power. And so we do the repair and clear. We use the Detox 360. And on people who, if we do heavy metal testing because things seem off, we find heavy metals, you can use chelation. And chelation is usually it's using something that can bind and eliminate or remove heavy metals from your body, because brain toxicity a lot of times is to the accumulation of these heavy metals. Now, the body should be able to clean itself out. The brain has these filters in place, but like we say in functional medicine, fire in the gut, fire in the brain. So if your gut is off, your brain is going to be off. So you get leaky gut, you get leaky brain, and that's a real problem because you don't want these things getting into your brain, right? But you want to remove heavy metals and toxins from your body, and that's the majority of that's going to be your liver and your gut. You can use a liquid that's going to be a chelation liquid as a binder to neutralize toxins, but we use glutathione, the AC glutathione that's in hepatosynergy. That is a really good binder. We can take calcium glucarate. There's a lot of stuff that we use in our products that can help you with that. And when people really need specifically some metal removal, zeolite, it's a humic mineral complex, and it really attracts ionically. It creates ionic bonds with metals, and we may need to use that. But for the most part, the most important thing is that's why we start with detoxification and digestion to help clean up the body, but clean up the brain, right? The next is to increase brain circulation. So you just learn the stimulation on the ears that can actually boost your brain circulation. What about you? Do you have anything that you like to do to boost your brain circulation?
Well, apart from exercise,
Mhm.
I still think meditating and having quiet time is really good for my brain,
Mhm.
and mostly because it's nervous system health, calming, and making sure everything is as it should be.
Yeah.
And so I use that. Um, Anything I can do to keep inflammation low.
Uh-huh.
So I stay away from those categories of food that are inflammatory, and then I try to get some of the activated charcoals if ever I have some night out where I'm a little more social.
Yeah.
And I am at home. So yeah, there's lots of different ways, but those are
Yeah.
my favorites.
Yeah, I love um, I like doing yoga. I like lifting weights. Those things feel boosting. Acupuncture. Acupuncture creates 200% greater vascular improvements with treatment, and MRI actually shows that. But um, that's an amazing thing. But the exercises, there's a lot of research out there, and all the research that I've looked at, the one thing that we know for sure is the best thing you can do for your brain is to exercise, hands down. It's crazy. What were you gonna say?
Well, the targeted for the big muscle groups,
Yeah.
like the squats, the ones I like the least.
Yeah, but in general, just good exercise is amazing for your brain. It's good for your heart. It's great for your whole body. But acupuncture really boosts the circulation in the brain, and the research is really clear on that. And so, definitely encourage that. That is not an opinion. The research is very clear. Blood tests. So we do blood tests to look at micronutrient deficiencies because those are linked to chronic diseases. And you want these healthy nutrients circulating in your cerebrospinal fluid and feeding your brain and making sure the brain's getting the nutrients it needs to do its job. And then we said exercise, the fitter your body, the fitter your brain. Some fun low intensity workouts. Aerobic is more like 20 to 120 minutes per day. But walking 10,000 steps with a clear mind, that's where hiking. I love hiking, right?
Oh yeah.
One of my really good friends who is a naturopath that focuses on brain health, Dr. Greg Eckel, he just wrote a book called Shake It Off. It's about Alzheimer's. And he always referred to going out in the woods as listening to the trees breathe. And I love that. Yoga classes, like we said, stationary bike. Richard Simmons, if you're into, sweating to the oldies, you can get out there and sweat the old out of you. Walking the stairs on the highest building. And then swimming increases fat burning the most. Have you swam recently?
Yes.
It's
Not regularly, but my friend has a pool in the mountains, and
yeah, it's amazing.
yeah, it's not as easy if you don't do it regularly.
Yeah.
But it's really beautiful in nature, especially was outside in the mountains, and I just realized how out of shape I am.
Yeah, a few years ago, I have my neighbor. He's a super fit guy. And he was telling me he went to the gym, and all these old guys just look out of shape. He gets in the pool and he could not keep up with them because that's a hard thing. I have some friends that are triathletes, and they'll always say the swimming portion in open water is so exhausting. It's so hard, but it's such an amazing workout. So the next thing you can do is calm your mind, and this is the meditation. Meditation can bring 10% happiness, deep breathing, 50% more focus. But one of the things about meditation is it increases gray matter. There was a study out of the Cleveland Clinic, and what they were looking at was how meditation consistently affected the brain. And you can do as little as 10 minutes of meditation a day for 40 days, and it starts to change your brain, healthier brain circulation. So like you said, the meditation really lights up the brain, because when you're meditating, you're not taking your energy down. You're elevating your energy. You'll see a level up in energy, especially with the brain. Now, of course, you get quiet. I mean, how many times it happens to us all? You start meditating and you find yourself like dozing off, and it's like your brain needs that rest.
Yeah.
Right? That happens.
Especially in the beginning. I think when you are switching and you're committing to that practice, then the meditation, it almost seems like that's your body's only way of relaxing.
Yeah.
And then it gets that signal and then it starts to rest. But then if you continue to do it over time, maybe instead of 1 time a day, 10 minutes, do it 2 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it during lunch or something. Then you start to see those advantages during your active time of the day.
Yeah, I like to, I usually get up around 5:30, and I don't say this to encourage anybody to do it, but I usually get up at 5:30, I do a lift, take a shower, and then I'll sit down and I'll meditate for 10 to 20 minutes. That's my routine. But if you could figure out a way to put meditation in your routine, I think you're going to see some improvements in your brain and your overall mood. Just like from the beginning, we said detoxification, but digestion is key. Fiber and beneficial yeast, they weed out fungus and colon debris. So it really helps filter out your gut. But getting probiotics in there seed your gut with healthy bacteria. Now, this is important because outside of the gut being the last phase of detoxification, we said that gut bacteria communicates with the mitochondria and increases the energy. But you have neuropeptides produced in your gut, brain-derived neurotropic factor, and vasoactive intestinal polypeptide, or VIP. Those stimulate your brain to heal. And there's a large majority of those that are produced by healthy gut bacteria. So taking care of your digestion, your gut, is critical for the brain. And it's crazy because when you find people that have these neurodegenerative diseases, they normally have some type of parasitic or opportunistic bacterial overgrowth, and they're usually constipated. It's really interesting. Constipation is critical. So with your digestion, you want to avoid GMOs, MSGs, and foods containing mycotoxins, which is fungal toxins like, unhealthy coffees, things like that. Foods with a lot of toxins can be a real problem.
Well, even
for you.
fruits and vegetables, I found.
Yeah.
So we might want to do a class on that someday, because that was really surprising. There's animal feed and then the human food, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah, and we're seeing more and more because when you put something like Roundup, it's a broad spectrum antibiotic and it's killing all these weeds. It's also killing the healthy microorganisms in the soil, which allows fungus to grow. So our foods have typically more toxins than before. So being selective on your food is incredible. And then reduce inflammation. Now, we look at inflammatory markers in the blood. We look at inflammation in the stool. We look at how inflammation is affecting adrenal hormones through salivary hormone testing. So you want to, use those, and most of you have had that testing done. If you haven't and you're curious about these things, get to one of the practitioners in our offices and say, hey, I'm really interested in some additional inflammation, just to make sure it's not there, right? We don't always recommend all of the testing, but for a lot of you, we do. And sometimes it's just good to be proactive. And so reducing inflammation by finding out the source is the most powerful way. So there are 5 steps there. Those will really help you out. And then just a little bit of tidbit for you on fast learning. This is something invented by Jim Quick, of quick learning. This guy can remember anything. But there's some keys to improving how you learn. And one is forget all the times you haven't and drop the negative self-talk, right? He calls them ants, automatic negative thoughts. So get rid of all the negative talk. That, hey, I can't learn, or I can't do this, and my brain can't handle that, or my brain doesn't work, or my brain's slower than yours. Like, you got to forget all the negativity. 2 is the A, and that's active learning. And that means understanding how to apply concepts for better learning. Like me and Darlene were just talking about this today, about how do you learn? And she's like, when I'm participating, right? For me, I'm kinesthetic. I like to touch things or draw when I'm doing it. I also learn well with hearing. So everybody's a little bit different. You got visual, you got hearing, so you're auditory, you got kinesthetic. You might just need to be moving, right? Participating. S is state of mind can make a big difference. There was some research that found that people who took a test in the state of mind they were when they were learning or studying had better memory recall. Whether it was anger or frustration or anxiety or happiness or joy. Sometimes if you're chewing gum while you're studying, you need to chew gum to regurgitate the knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Recreate that atmosphere.
So state of mind is critical. And then teaching. They say the best way to master is to teach, and that's teach someone after you learn something, remember it better. So that's your fast learning tips to sharpen up your brain, to make, better, make better learning, or just to make learning easier for yourself and keep the brain healthy and sharp. And that's how you can re-engineer your brain. So enjoy your new brain. Anything you want to add today?
No, I think that was pretty thorough. If anyone has any questions, though, they can always call, and then we can fill in those gaps or give you more information about anything that we just presented today.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the additional stuff we do in the office, the IV and AD, we do that in our offices. We have peptides that help with the brain. But these are some things that you can employ on your own and understand why our process is set up the way that it is. So everybody have a great day. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you at your next class. Take care.